In the world of dating, understanding what truly makes a guy stand out can be just as important as knowing what turns women off. Ever wondered why certain types of guys women find unattractive seem to linger in the shadows of romance? From overconfidence to lack of empathy, there are specific types of guys that fail to make a positive impression. This isn't just about what women avoid, but also about what truly makes men attractive. Dive into the intricacies of why women find most men unattractive and discover the dating advice for men that can transform perception. Are you one of the types of guys who might unknowingly fall into these categories? If you find this content helpful and want to delve deeper into mastering the art of attracting genuine interest, show your support by hitting the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the Stoic Goddess for more insightful tips and strategies. Number 1. The overly emotional man. In relationships, we often hear that opposites attract, but what happens when those differences start feeling like deep-seated incompatibilities? However, through self-reflection, we can continue striving to become the best versions of ourselves. Let's delve into a scenario that many of us have encountered: the overly emotional man. While it's admirable for a man to be in touch with his feelings, something that many women value, where does one draw the line between healthy emotional expression and being overly emotional? When emotions become excessive, they often mask deeper insecurities, leading to recurring issues in a relationship. Imagine a man who loses his job, a devastating experience for anyone. His partner offers support and empathy during the initial stages of his grief. But what if, months later, he remains trapped in a cycle of complaining and self-pity without making any real effort to move forward? Would his partner still find his emotional openness appealing, or would she start to question whether this is the man she can rely on in the long term? This situation raises a crucial question: is there a point where emotional vulnerability turns into emotional burden? Stoicism, an ancient philosophy, suggests that while emotions are natural, they should not dominate our decisions or actions. A Stoic approach would encourage the man to acknowledge his feelings, but not let them dictate his behavior. Instead, he would focus on what he can control, like finding new opportunities and building resilience. Some might argue that this perspective promotes emotional suppression, but it's more about balance. It's about being the shoulder someone can cry on, rather than constantly seeking one. After all, relationships thrive on mutual support and strength, not on one partner carrying the emotional weight of the other. So, is there a place for Stoicism in modern relationships? Could adopting a more balanced, self-controlled approach help us navigate these emotional waters more effectively? Or do we risk becoming too detached, losing the emotional connection that's so vital in a partnership? The answers to these questions might just be the key to finding the right balance between emotional openness and emotional stability in relationships. Number 2. The chronic complainer. In the midst of life's roller coaster, it's not unusual to encounter the occasional hurdle or frustration. A missed bus, a rainy day, or even a less than perfect meal at a favorite restaurant, all part of life's unpredictable journey. But what happens when someone you care about seems to find dissatisfaction in every corner of life? What if their world is painted in shades of gray, no matter how much sunshine you try to bring into it? Meet Jack, a man with a sharp wit, a deep sense of intelligence, and a penchant for finding flaws in the fabric of everyday life. His girlfriend Emma was initially drawn to his keen observations, mistaking his critiques for insight and his sarcasm for humor. But as the days turned into months, she began to see a different side of Jack, one that was constantly shadowed by dissatisfaction. The charm of his sharp tongue began to wear thin, revealing what it truly was: a habit of chronic complaining. Every day brought a new grievance. The morning coffee wasn't hot enough. The commute was always too long. The weather? Too unpredictable. And don't even get him started on the neighbors: too loud, too nosy, too ... everything. For Jack, life seemed to be an endless parade of annoyances, each one more bothersome than the last. Emma tried to counterbalance his negativity with her optimism, She pointed out the silver linings, the unexpected time to catch up on a podcast during the commute, the cozy feeling of a cool breeze on a hot day, but it was like trying to patch a sinking ship with a Band-Aid. No matter how hard she tried, Jack's complaints drowned out her efforts. The constant barrage of negativity started to take its toll on Emma. She found herself dreading their conversations, knowing that they would inevitably turn into a list of things that had gone wrong that day. She felt her own positivity waning, her energy drained by the relentless cloud of Jack's complaints. What happened to the man she fell in love with? Was he always this way, or had she just been too blind to see it? But the question that haunted Emma the most was this: why did she continue to put up with it? What was it about Jack that made her stay, even when his complaints began to chip away at her own happiness? Was it loyalty? Hope that he would change? Or was it something deeper, perhaps a fear of being alone, or the belief that love means accepting someone's flaws, no matter how heavy the burden? As days turned into nights, Emma found herself at a crossroads. She could continue to endure Jack's negativity, hoping that one day he would wake up with a new outlook on life. Or she could take a step back and ask herself, is this the life I want to live? Is this the love I deserve? In a world where everyone faces challenges, Emma realized that the difference lies in how we choose to handle them. While it's normal to vent from time to time, to share our frustrations with those we trust, there's a line between occasional complaining and a chronic pattern of negativity. Jack had crossed that line long ago, and Emma was left to decide if she would follow him down that path or carve out a new one for herself. But even as she pondered her next move, a deeper question lingered: could Jack change? Was his negativity a permanent fixture, or simply a phase that he could outgrow with the right support? Emma didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't be the only one fighting to keep their relationship afloat. One evening, after another long day filled with Jack's complaints, Emma made a decision. She sat down with him, her voice steady but firm, and asked, "Jack, are you happy?" Truly happy? The question hung in the air, a challenge and an invitation all at once. Jack, caught off guard, hesitated before answering. "I don't know," he finally admitted, his usual confidence faltering. "I guess ... I've just gotten used to things being a certain way." Emma nodded, her heart aching but resolute. "I want to be with you, Jack, but I can't keep living in this cloud of negativity. I need to know if you're willing to try to see the good in life, to focus on the positive, even when things aren't perfect. Because if you're not, I'm not sure I can stay." The room was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. For the first time, Jack seemed to truly see the impact his behavior had on Emma and on himself. Could he change? Was he willing to try? And if he did, would it be enough to save their relationship? Emma didn't have all the answers, but she knew that something had to give. Whether Jack would rise to the challenge or continue down his path of complaints was a question that only time could answer. But for now, she had made her stand, and it was up to Jack to decide if he would meet her halfway. In the end, the story of Jack and Emma is not just about one man's chronic complaining, but about the choices we all make in our relationships. Do we accept the flaws of those we love, even when they weigh us down? Or do we set boundaries, not out of selfishness, but out of self-preservation? And most importantly, can love really change a person, or are some habits too deeply ingrained to ever be truly overcome? The answers to these questions are never easy, but they are crucial. For in the end, life is too short to be spent in the shadow of constant negativity. And while love may be patient and kind, it is also honest, and sometimes honesty requires us to walk away from what no longer serves us. Number 3. The selfish man. In a bustling city where ambition thrived, lived a man named Duncan. From the outside, he was the epitome of success. His towering office in the heart of the financial district, his polished suits, and his ever-present air of confidence made him the envy of many. But beneath this veneer of accomplishment lay a man consumed by selfishness, a man who had built his empire on the broken backs of others. Duncan had always been sharp, cunning, and undeniably intelligent. His rise in the corporate world was swift, leaving others in his wake as he climbed higher, indifferent to the lives he disrupted. Survival of the fittest, he would often say, brushing aside the moral dilemmas that came his way. But was survival truly worth it when it came at such a cost? One evening, as the city lights flickered against the twilight, Duncan found himself alone in his penthouse, overlooking the city he had come to dominate. But the silence was deafening. His phone, once a constant buzz of activity, was now eerily quiet. The friends who had once flocked to his side had drifted away, tired of his relentless drive and lack of empathy. Even his family had grown distant, unable to connect with the man he had become. Stoicism teaches us that true success isn't about external achievements, but about inner virtue and the connections we foster. Duncan's relentless pursuit of power, devoid of empathy, led him to a hollow existence. His empire, built on the broken backs of others, could not withstand the collapse that followed. But was this fall inevitable? Could Duncan have seen it coming? Or was he blinded by his own ambition? The story of Duncan poses a critical question: is it worth achieving everything if, in the end, you're left with nothing? In the eyes of society, success is often measured by wealth and status, but Stoicism challenges us to look deeper. Could it be that the very traits Duncan relied on, cunning, ambition, selfishness, were the seeds of his own destruction? Consider this: what if Duncan had applied Stoic principles in his life? Instead of chasing after more, he could have focused on what truly matters: integrity, relationships, and inner peace. Scientific studies show that people who prioritize meaningful connections over material success are often happier and more fulfilled. But how many, like Duncan, learn this lesson too late? Duncan's tale isn't just a warning, it's a call to examine our own lives. Are we, too, guilty of placing ambition above humanity? And if so, what can we do to change before it's too late? The answers lie not in the pursuit of external success, but in the cultivation of virtues that stand the test of time. Number 4. Clingy person. Clinginess often masks deeper insecurities and fears of loss. A healthy relationship allows for personal space and trust. Consider Devlin, the attentive boyfriend. At first, his eagerness to be involved in Farah's life felt like devotion. Who wouldn't want a partner who cares so deeply? But as days turned into weeks, Devlin's behavior began to shift. His calls became more frequent, his questions more probing, and his need for reassurance grew incessant. What once seemed like love now feels like a burden, heavy and relentless. Farah notices Devlin's behavior slipping into something more possessive. He shows up unexpectedly, claiming it's a surprise, but the real surprise is how she feels trapped. Every moment, Devlin needs her to validate his worth, to remind him that she's still there, still committed. His affection, once charming, now feels like a cage tightening around her. Should Farah continue to endure this stifling relationship, hoping Devlin will change, or does she need to break free before she loses her sense of self entirely? The allure of love and the comfort of familiarity often blind us to the reality of the situation. Is it love when it becomes an obligation? When does caring cross the line into controlling? Think about Devlin's actions: the constant checking in, the unannounced visits. At first, these might seem harmless, even sweet, but why should Farah have to reassure him constantly? Why should she feel guilty for needing space, for wanting a life outside of their relationship? The more she gives in to Devlin's demands, the more he asks, creating a cycle that drains her emotionally. It's not just about feeling loved anymore, it's about maintaining a sense of self, of freedom. Farah begins to realize that Devlin's insecurities are not hers to fix. But the question remains: can she walk away from someone who claims to love her so intensely, or is she destined to stay, suffocated by a love that no longer feels like her own? These are the questions Farah faces daily. What would you do in her place? The temptation to stay in the comfort of what is known, even when it's toxic, is strong. But at what cost? When does sacrifice in a relationship become self-destruction? Number 5. The lazy underachiever. Ambition and drive are attractive qualities. a lack of focus can lead to presentation, which affects both personal life and relationships. Why is it that some men, like Ethan, seem content to drift through life without any real direction? Ethan had everything going for him: charm, good looks, and intelligence. Yet, somewhere along the way, he lost his drive, his ambition fading into complacency. He was the kind of man who always found excuses, who preferred to stay in his comfort zone rather than pushing himself towards something greater. It wasn't that Ethan was incapable, he simply chose not to try. But what happens when this kind of attitude seeps into a relationship? Jessica, who once found Ethan's laid-back attitude refreshing, began to see it differently as time went on. She noticed how Ethan's lack of motivation was more than just a phase, it was a lifestyle. He was content with mediocrity, settling for the bare minimum in both his career and personal life. Jessica, on the other hand, had dreams, goals she was eager to chase. She couldn't understand why Ethan was so resistant to the idea of self-improvement. What was holding him back? Why was he so afraid of failure that he didn't even try? The turning point came when Jessica realized that Ethan's complacency was starting to drag her down too. She found herself making excuses for him, justifying his lack of ambition to her friends and family. But deep down, she knew that Ethan's refusal to grow wasn't just a personal choice, it was affecting their relationship. How long could she continue to carry the weight of both their dreams? Was it fair to sacrifice her own aspirations for someone who refused to share in them? Jessica began to wonder why she was putting up with this. Why was she tolerating a partner who was content to stand still while she was eager to move forward? She remembered a time when they used to talk about the future, about building a life together that was full of excitement and adventure. But now, those conversations felt like distant memories, replaced by the monotony of a relationship stuck in neutral. As time passed, Jessica started to see the cracks in their relationship more clearly. Ethan's lack of ambition wasn't just a small flaw, it was a fundamental difference in values. She needed someone who shared her drive, someone who would push her to be better, just as she would push him. Was it too much to ask for a partner who was equally passionate about building a future together? Was it wrong to want more than just a comfortable, predictable life? Jessica finally came to a decision. She realized that settling for less than what she truly wanted would only lead to resentment. It wasn't about changing Ethan or forcing him to become someone he wasn't. It was about recognizing that their paths had diverged, and that continuing down the same road would only lead to disappointment for both of them. She deserved a partner who shared her vision for the future, who would challenge her and grow alongside her. In the end, Jessica chose to walk away, leaving behind a relationship that had once seemed full of promise. It was a difficult decision, but she knew it was the right one. She couldn't afford to waste any more time on someone who wasn't willing to put in the effort. And as she moved forward, she felt a sense of relief, knowing that she had chosen herself her dreams, her ambitions, her future. Number 6. The Boastful Man. Evelyn had always been the kind of woman who valued humility. Yet she found herself inexplicably drawn to Trevor, a man whose confidence bordered on arrogance. But was it confidence, or was it something darker, an insatiable need for validation? Why did Trevor always seem to dominate the conversation, leaving little room for others? Was it his way of masking insecurity, or did he truly believe in his superiority? The evening started innocently enough. A casual dinner, a few friends, and yet, as the night progressed, Trevor's voice became the dominant one, weaving tales of his achievements, his travels, and his connections. He didn't just share, he boasted. Every word dripped with self-importance, leaving a bitter taste in the air. Evelyn couldn't help but wonder, why did people like Trevor feel the need to belittle others? Was it a defense mechanism, a shield against their own vulnerabilities? Or was it something more sinister, a deep-seated belief that they were truly above everyone else? As she listened, Evelyn's mind drifted to the countless times she had seen Trevor cut off others mid-sentence, dismiss their opinions, and turn every conversation back to himself. What drove this behavior? Was it a lack of empathy, or was it a desperate attempt to assert control in a world that felt unpredictable? But then came the tipping point. Trevor, in his usual fashion, made a disparaging remark about a mutual friend, belittling their career choices and mocking their lifestyle. It was a moment that revealed more about Trevor than any of his stories ever could. What kind of person feels the need to tear others down to elevate themselves? And more importantly, why do we tolerate such behavior? Evelyn could feel the tension in the room. Everyone else seemed uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. Was it fear of confrontation, or had they simply grown accustomed to Trevor's ways? And why did they allow his arrogance to overshadow their own voices? As the night wore on, Evelyn found herself at a crossroads. Should she confront Trevor, risking the fallout, or should she quietly distance herself, letting him remain trapped in his bubble of self-deception? Was it worth trying to change someone so deeply entrenched in their own delusions? Or was it better to walk away, preserving her own peace of mind? In the end, Evelyn made her decision. She leaned in, catching Trevor's eye, and with a calm but firm tone asked, "Trevor, do you ever wonder why you feel the need to overshadow others? What are you really trying to prove?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. Trevor blinked, caught off guard, but before he could respond, Evelyn stood up, offering a polite smile to the rest of the group. "Thank you for the evening," she said, her voice steady, "but I think it's time I left." As she walked away, Evelyn felt a sense of relief. She had faced the discomfort head-on, choosing to break the cycle of tolerance for toxic behavior. But as she stepped out into the cool night air, she couldn't help but wonder how many more Trevors were out there, hiding their insecurities behind a facade of arrogance. And more importantly, how many more people like her would choose to walk away rather than confront the root of the problem? Number 7. The horny man. What makes a man act in ways that defy logic, pushing boundaries in the pursuit of fleeting desires? Drake, a man of seemingly composed demeanor, found himself entangled in a web of impulses that even he couldn't fully comprehend. The allure of the forbidden, the thrill of the chase, was it the excitement of the unknown or something deeper, darker that drove him? Drake was captivated by Ava, a woman who exuded confidence and mystery. She wasn't just another face in the crowd, she was the embodiment of everything he found irresistible. Her presence was intoxicating, and Drake, despite his better judgment, was drawn to her like a moth to a flame. But what was it about Ava that made her so irresistible? Was it her charm, her enigmatic smile, or the way she seemed to understand the unspoken thoughts that lingered in the recesses of his mind? As their interactions deepened, Drake's behavior began to change. He became more assertive, sometimes to the point of aggression, driven by a desire that seemed to cloud his judgment. He would find reasons to be near her, to touch her in ways that seemed innocent but carried a weight of unspoken intentions. Why did he feel the need to push the limits of their relationship? Was it a genuine connection or merely a manifestation of his own unresolved desires? The situation escalated when Drake's actions crossed a line, one that Ava couldn't ignore. She noticed the subtle shifts in his behavior, the way his gaze lingered a bit too long, the way his words carried an undertone that made her uncomfortable. Yet she hesitated to confront him directly. Why do people often endure discomfort rather than address it head-on? Is it the fear of confrontation, the hope that things will change on their own, or something more insidious, a doubt that perhaps they are overreacting? Ava's hesitation only fueled Drake's behavior. He interpreted her silence as consent, and his actions became bolder. But was he truly at fault, or was he merely a product of a society that often blurs the lines between admiration and objectification? Why do some men believe that their desires justify their actions, even when it means disregarding the feelings of others? The turning point came when Ava finally decided to speak up. Her voice, once gentle and accommodating, now carried the weight of all the moments she had let slide. She confronted Drake, not with anger, but with a calm resolve that left no room for misinterpretation. Why did it take her so long to reach this point? And what does it say about the dynamics of power and control in relationships that such a confrontation felt inevitable? Drake's response was a mix of surprise and defensiveness. He hadn't realized the impact of his actions, or so he claimed. But was it truly ignorance, or was it a convenient excuse to absolve himself of responsibility? Why do people often deny their wrongdoings until they are faced with undeniable evidence? But the lingering question remains, how many others find themselves in similar situations, torn between desire and respect, between silence and confrontation? And why do we often wait until it's too late to address the underlying issues that fuel such behavior? The story of Drake and Ava is a reminder of the complexities of human desire, the fine line between attraction and obsession, and the importance of communication in navigating the murky waters of relationships. Number 8. The Insecure Man, a Tale of Two Souls. Why does a man's insecurity often surface in the most critical moments? It was a question that haunted Sarah as she watched Edric, her once confident partner, spiral into a maze of self-doubt. Their relationship had been a dance of passion and understanding until one day, things changed. Sarah had always admired Edric's strength, but recently she noticed a shift in his demeanor. He no longer led conversations with ease, and his once lively eyes now avoided hers. What had caused this transformation? Was it something she had done, or was this change rooted deep within Edric himself? One evening, as they sat across from each other at their favorite cafe, Edric's silence spoke louder than words. He stared into his coffee, lost in thoughts he didn't want to share. Sarah felt the tension between them and decided to confront it head-on. "Edric, what's going on? You've been distant lately, and I can't help but feel like you're pulling away. Is there something you're not telling me?" Sarah's voice was gentle, yet firm, a balance of concern and determination. Edric sighed, his shoulders slumping under the weight of his thoughts. "I don't know, Sarah. It's like, I'm not enough. I see the way other men look at you, and I wonder if you're comparing me to them. Maybe you deserve better." Sarah was taken aback. Edric's insecurities were deeper than she had imagined. How had she missed the signs? More importantly, how could she help him see that his worth wasn't defined by others? "Why do you think you're not enough, Edric? Is it because of what others say or do, or is it because of how you see yourself?" Sarah's questions were not just for Edric, but for anyone who had ever doubted their value in a relationship. Edric's gaze met hers, and for a moment, the vulnerability in his eyes was unmistakable. "I don't know. Maybe it's both. I've been comparing myself to others, and I feel like I'm falling short. I'm scared, Sarah. Scared that one day you'll realize I'm not the man you thought I was." Sarah leaned forward, her hand reaching out to touch his. "Edric, everyone has doubts, but those doubts don't define us. What defines us is how we face them. You've always been strong, but strength isn't about never feeling insecure, it's about acknowledging those feelings and choosing to rise above them." Edric's fingers tightened around hers, as if drawing strength from her words. "But what if I can't? What if my insecurities ruin everything between us?" Sarah smiled, her eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "The only thing that can ruin us is if you stop trying. We all have our moments of weakness, but they don't last forever. The question is, will you let these moments control you, or will you control them?" Edric's silence was thoughtful, and Sarah could see the gears turning in his mind. It wasn't an easy road, but it was one they could walk together. She knew this conversation wouldn't solve everything, but it was a start, a way to address the problem and work through it as a team. As they left the cafe hand in hand, Edric's insecurities didn't magically disappear, but there was a new resolve in his step. He understood that his worth wasn't tied to others' perceptions, but to how he chose to face his fears. Why do we let insecurities hold us back? Is it because we fear what others think, or is it because we doubt ourselves? And if that's the case, isn't it time to ask ourselves if those fears are worth losing something or someone precious? Number 9. the perpetual player. In a city that never sleeps, where neon lights dance on rain-slicked streets and whispers of fleeting romance fill the air, there lived a man named Vincent. To the casual observer, Vincent was the epitome of charm. His smile was as disarming as a magician's trick, his words spun like silk, and his gaze seemed to promise the world. But beneath this polished exterior lay a heart as cold as the winter wind. Vincent was not searching for love or connection, he was playing a game with rules only he knew. Sophie met Vincent on one of those nights when the city seemed to pulse with possibility. He approached her with the confidence of someone who had never been refused, his voice warm and inviting. They talked, laughed, and shared stories under the glow of the city's lights. Sophie felt a connection she hadn't felt in years, a spark that ignited something deep within her. But was it real, or was it just another one of Vincent's illusions? As the weeks passed, Vincent continued to weave his web. He sent flowers, whispered sweet nothings, and painted a picture of a future that seemed almost too good to be true. Sophie found herself falling for him, unable to resist the allure of his charm. But in quiet moments, doubts crept in. Why did he always avoid talking about his past? Why did he disappear for days at a time, only to return with a ready excuse? The questions lingered like shadows, but Sophie pushed them aside, clinging to the dream Vincent had crafted for her. It wasn't until she found herself alone one evening, staring at a bouquet of flowers that had started to wilt, that the truth began to dawn on her. Vincent's words, once so sweet, now felt hollow. His promises were like the city's neon lights, bright and beautiful but ultimately fleeting. Sophie began to see Vincent for what he was, an illusionist, a man who played with hearts like a magician with cards. But why had she let herself be fooled? Why had she ignored the red flags, the inconsistencies, the warning signs? In a moment of clarity, Sophie realized the answer. She had wanted to believe in the magic, in the possibility that someone like Vincent could be real. But the reality was far different. Vincent had no interest in love or connection. He was addicted to the chase, to the thrill of conquering hearts, only to discard them once the game was over. But what drove someone like Vincent to live this way? Was it fear of commitment? A deep-seated insecurity masked by bravado? Or was he simply incapable of feeling anything beyond the surface? Sophie knew she deserved better than to be a pawn in someone else's game. She confronted Vincent, her voice steady but firm. "What are you afraid of, Vincent? Why do you run from what's real?" Vincent's smile faltered for the first time. He had no answer, only silence. It was then that Sophie understood Vincent was a man trapped in his own illusion, a prisoner of his own making. Walking away from Vincent was not easy, but it was necessary. Sophie chose to value herself and her emotions, refusing to be another notch in his belt. As she left, she couldn't help but wonder how many others had fallen for Vincent's tricks. How many hearts had he broken, and how many more would it take before he realized the emptiness of his game? But those were questions for another time. For now, Sophie was content in knowing that she had escaped the illusion and found something real, her own self-worth. And as she walked away, the city's lights seemed a little less bright, but a little more honest. As we've explored today, the types of guys women find unattractive offer a critical insight into what turns potential partners away. From overconfidence to lack of ambition, understanding why women find men unattractive can transform your approach to dating. Remember, the key is not just to avoid being one of these types of guys unattractive, but to cultivate traits that resonate with what women genuinely find appealing. This journey isn't about changing who you are, but refining yourself to better connect with others. Embrace these insights as part of your growth and watch as your dating life transforms. If you found this advice helpful, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the Stoic Goddess for more dating advice for men. Share your thoughts in the comments and tap the notification bell to catch our next video. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.